Climate change, the moral responsibility of humans toward nature. Climate change is one of the most pressing challenges of our time, with far-reaching consequences for the environment, ecosystems, and human societies. Beyond its scientific and political dimensions, climate change raises profound ethical questions about humanity's relationship with nature and our moral responsibility to protect the planet for future generations. At its core, climate change is not just an environmental issue, it is a philosophical issue that forces us to confront our values, priorities, and obligations. Number 1. The science of climate change. Climate change refers to long-term changes in temperature, precipitation, and other atmospheric conditions, primarily driven by human activities such as burning fossil fuels, deforestation, and industrial agriculture. The scientific consensus is clear. Human activities are the primary cause of global warming, and the consequences, rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and biodiversity loss, are already being felt around the world. The greenhouse effect. The burning of fossil fuels releases carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, trapping heat and causing global temperatures to rise. Tipping points. Climate scientists warn that certain thresholds or tipping points could lead to irreversible changes, such as the collapse of ice sheets or the release of methane from thawing permafrost. Interconnected systems. Climate change is not an isolated issue. It affects ecosystems, economies, and societies in complex and interconnected ways. 2. The ethical dimensions of climate change. Climate change is not just a scientific or technical problem. It is a moral problem that challenges us to rethink our relationship with nature and our responsibilities to one another. Anthropocentrism versus ecocentrism. Traditional ethical frameworks often prioritize human interests over the environment, anthropocentrism. However, climate change forces us to consider the intrinsic value of nature and the rights of non-human species, ecocentrism. Should we protect nature for its own sake or only for the benefits it provides to humans? Intergenerational justice. Climate change disproportionately affects future generations, who will bear the brunt of its consequences despite having contributed little to the problem. This raises questions about our moral obligations to those who come after us. Do we have a duty to leave a habitable planet for future generations? Global inequality. The impacts of climate change are not evenly distributed. Developing countries and marginalized communities, which have contributed the least to greenhouse gas emissions, are often the most vulnerable to its effects. This raises questions about fairness, responsibility, and the need for global solidarity. 3. The moral responsibility of individuals and societies. Addressing climate change requires collective action, but it also raises questions about individual responsibility and the role of governments, corporations, and institutions. Individual responsibility. To what extent are individuals morally responsible for reducing their carbon footprint? While individual actions like recycling, conserving energy, and reducing meat consumption are important, systemic change is also necessary to address the scale of the problem. Corporate responsibility. Corporations, particularly those in the fossil fuel industry, have played a significant role in driving climate change. Do these companies have a moral obligation to transition to sustainable practices and compensate for the harm they have caused? Government action. Governments have the power to enact policies that reduce emissions, promote renewable energy, and protect vulnerable communities. However, political will and public support are often lacking. What is the moral responsibility of governments to act on climate change, even in the face of economic or political challenges? 4. The role of ethics in climate action. Ethics can provide a framework for addressing climate change by guiding decision-making, prioritizing values, and fostering a sense of moral urgency. Utilitarianism. From a utilitarian perspective, actions should be taken to maximize overall well-being and minimize harm. This would involve reducing emissions, protecting ecosystems, and ensuring that the benefits and burdens of climate action are distributed fairly. Deontological ethics. A deontological approach focuses on moral duties and principles, such as the duty to protect the environment, respect the rights of future generations, and avoid causing harm to others. Virtue ethics. Virtue ethics emphasizes the importance of cultivating moral character, such as compassion, humility, and stewardship. This approach encourages individuals and societies to act in ways that reflect a deep respect for nature and a commitment to the common good. 5. The philosophy of nature. Climate change challenges us to rethink our philosophical understanding of nature and our place within it. The intrinsic value of nature. Many environmental philosophers argue that nature has intrinsic value, that is, value independent of its usefulness to humans. This perspective calls for a shift from viewing nature as a resource to be exploited to seeing it as a community to which we belong. Deep ecology. Deep ecology, a philosophical movement founded by Arne Naess, emphasizes the interconnectedness of all life and the need for a radical transformation of human values and lifestyles. It calls for a profound respect for nature and a rejection of consumerism and materialism. Ecological citizenship. Climate change requires us to think of ourselves not just as citizens of nations, but as members of a global ecological community. This perspective emphasizes our shared responsibility to protect the planet and its inhabitants. 6. The role of hope and action. While the challenges of climate change can feel overwhelming, philosophy can also inspire hope and motivate action. The power of collective action. History has shown that humanity is capable of overcoming seemingly insurmountable challenges when we work together. The fight against climate change requires global cooperation, innovation, and a shared sense of purpose. The importance of hope. Philosophers like Rebecca Solnit argue that hope is not about certainty, but about the possibility of change. Even in the face of uncertainty, we can take meaningful action to create a better future. The ethics of resilience. Climate change will require us to adapt to new realities and build resilient communities. This involves not only technological solutions, but also a commitment to justice, equity, and compassion. 7. Conclusion. A call to moral action. Climate change is more than an environmental crisis. It is a moral crisis that challenges us to rethink our values, priorities, and responsibilities. It forces us to confront difficult questions about our relationship with nature, our obligations to future generations, and the kind of world we want to create. As we grapple with the ethical dimensions of climate change, we must remember that the choices we make today will shape the future of our planet and all its inhabitants. By acting with courage, compassion, and a sense of shared responsibility, we can rise to the challenge of climate change and build a more just, sustainable, and flourishing world. In the words of environmentalist Aldo Leopold, a thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. It is wrong when it tends otherwise.